Welcome to Autism Knows No Borders, a podcast where people connected to autism inspire change and build community. Together with the Global Autism Project, I'm your host, Rachel Harmon, a professional with over a decade of experience in the field of autism services, outreach, and advocacy. We've reached the end of 2024. To celebrate, we'll be reviewing some of our favorite moments from this year. Part 1 will highlight episodes 161 through 176, and Part 2, episodes 177 through 192. Since we started working on this podcast almost 5 years ago, we've brought on a wide range of guests, including prominent autistic self-advocates, such as Dr. Temple Grandin, Dr. Stephen Shore, Dr. Carrie Magro, Rachel Barcelona, and Anthony Ayani, parents like Tiffany Hammond and Bobby Rubio, some of our Global Autism Project partners, such as Mafra Chang from Ecuador and Pooja Panesar from Kenya, and other professionals in the field, such as Michelle Garcia Winner from Social Thinking and Harold Neerland from Autism Europe. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, this 2024 recap will bring you back to the heartfelt stories we've been hearing from our guests. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. This episode will give you a good idea of what Autism Knows No Borders is all about. Special thanks to our SkillCorps alumni for helping to put this episode together: Adriana Garcia, Kelly Cotter, Marianne Spiotta, Colleen Dorsey, Danielle Terrell, and Yina Perez. In this episode, discover what's possible when we build bridges together. And now, I present you the Global Autism Community. In episodes 161 and 162, we highlighted a SkillCorps volunteer trip with Team Runda. Our SkillCorps program is an opportunity for self-advocates and professionals to travel to our international partner sites and collaborate with their local teachers and therapists. The first half of this two-parter showcased our Global Autism Project partner, Yves Chomjasha from Silver Bells in Kigali. Here's Yves talking about the impact of the community events we co-hosted while the SkillCorps team was there.
Oh my God, it really made a big difference starting from the parents training because they had never seen self-advocates. Meeting Andrew.
Yeah.
Understanding he's an ABA therapist. It blew them out. And they had never heard also from parents advocates as well. So those the times we talk about this, a child can be better, but I've never seen the really life experience. So they talked to the self-advocates and parents advocates. They knew that things are possible. They knew their children can also have a better future in life and be productive. Yeah. And also coming back to the outreach with the community, it was a big advocacy for the autism community because we trained with your help. We trained 30 districts, and that's what makes Rwanda. So it means we have ambassadors in different districts in the whole of Rwanda who will know at least if they meet an autistic child, they'll not think it's black magic. They'll know, okay, can you please go maybe to Silver Bells for assessment? At least it was really huge. And I know it will make a difference not only in Kigali, but in the outskirts of Kigali as well.
In episode 162, I was joined by our SkillCorps volunteers who visited Silver Bells, the autism center highlighted in the previous clip. Here are Ashonda Wander-Yates sharing an inspiring moment from the trip, Bonnie Kwong discussing what she learned about global collaboration, and Kaylee Bryant talking about how she grew personally from this experience.
One of the things that I was both inspired and moved by was when I was in the classroom and seeing the love that the teachers had for their kiddos, but also allowing the students to know that they value their emotions. So one of the classes, the kids were looking to go outside to go into the pool, and then it just started downpouring. And so the teacher was like, all right, I know y'all are upset. I'll give y'all a few seconds to get the frustration out. He gave them 30 seconds. They threw themselves on the ground. Some stood up screaming, crying for 30 seconds. And he was like, all right, time is up. And they were like, oh. And they sat in their seat and he continued on with his lesson. But to know that the kids know that their teacher valued their feelings was important because I know here in America, a lot of times it's just like, oh, all right, come on, it's raining, but you have to get over it. We kind of brush over people's feelings and emotions. And the kids, when they saw that their teacher actually understood their perspective and gave them the space to express themselves appropriately, and then, got on with their lesson, I was completely inspired by it as a parent and as a BCBA.
Do with, not for is definitely something that I am trying to use in my daily professional life now. I think it is so important to help people get there on their own, help them and support them, but not do it for them. I think a lot of the time people just want a quick fix, someone else to do it for them. But in the end, that doesn't help more people in the future. Like, it's not sustainable, it's not long lasting. And I think if we give others the tools that they can use, then it's going to be a longer lasting change. And it's, in the end, it's going to impact more kids. If we teach, for example, a teacher to use the skills rather than providing direct one-to-one support for one student in their classroom, but we give the teachers the skills, then they're not only helping this one child, but they help so many more in the future.
My big word for our time was flexible. I've always been, I'm going to write it in Sharpie on my calendar. It's staying that way. And in the field of ABA, especially like working in like a clinic setting, like that's never the case. And leading up to the trip, it used to not bother me as much, but in a couple months leading up to the trip, I started noticing that I'd get halfway through my day where my entire schedule has changed. And I'm just like praying that the afternoon stays. It just has to stay. And like, then it wouldn't. And I just, whole day ruined. So something that really like stuck with me was like day one, Molly's like, take a big red marker and write tentative. Don't hang on to this. And like, now my calendar is written in pencil. And I have tentative across the top of my calendar because I have to remind myself like that it's okay. So professionally, I think it's changed not just me, but like I don't go into like, I don't get a SOS severe behavior and I'm like, oh man, no, like my schedule's ruined. Like I have to go do this and I can't go do that. And like, I want to help, but like, it's frustrating me. And like, I don't feel that anymore. And I know my team doesn't feel that frustration from me anymore because I'm able to, it's okay. Like I can stay here. It's all right. Like we can do this.
Livia Sarah came on the show for episode 163. Livia is an autistic self-advocate, eating disorder survivor, author, and host of the podcast Live Label Free. This is Livia explaining how to disentangle autistic traits from eating disorder behaviors.
I think, first of all, it's really important to learn how to disentangle the autistic traits from eating disorder behaviors, because that was a huge, unknown barrier for me. And that's why I think, the professional treatment, like I said, it was mentally traumatizing because the professionals basically told me, all these preferences you have around food and that you need structure around food and that you need the predictability around food. They were all saying well, as long as you have that, you won't recover from your eating disorder. And for me, discovering the autism was wow, my desire for predictability and structure and routine, these are just my preferences in all areas of my life. So why wouldn't they also be preferences around food? And I think that was almost the golden ticket for me to be okay, these can just be autistic traits and we can separate the eating disorder. We can leave the eating disorder behind us because these things are completely unrelated.
Episode 164 was a global autism community roundtable about autism representation in the media. Listen to autistic self-advocates Andrew Bennett and Michelle Vinokurov, as well as autism sibling Ali Carbone, discussing how portrayals of autism in movies and TV shows have evolved and what is still lacking in this space.
I think that Rain Man was important because it did get people to talk about it. And it also had a name to it. It wasn't just a disability or he was just mentally ill, which is probably what people would have called it before that time. Just saying the name of it was groundbreaking, but also that there is going to be an inherent risk of stereotyping and forming a trope, no matter what interpretation or manifestation of autism is there. So some people look at Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory and think, well, he's autistic. Of course, the writers have decided not to comment on that and just to deny that for reasons that are still debated. But it's possible that people get an understanding of that's what autism is like, or perhaps in other categories or different characterizations of it in the media. And we'll probably touch on some of those today. The difference between the good interpretations and the problematic ones are we seeing some degree of growth out of that trope over time? And maybe in Raymond, what we did see was near the end, you could see that Raymond, the main character, was starting to recognize and understand that there were other people in his life. And, hey, I'm going to show some affection in the way that he hadn't learned to do before, while also seeing that Charlie, his brother, who was turned around from being a total jerk to actually caring about him a little bit, with that intermediary step of caring about him, but just because he was useful to Charlie's own aims.
I think that from the past to now, like we look at the overall picture, that like I feel like it's still a lot of a work in progress, because we all know that like autism is a spectrum. Like there's a lot of different abilities, a lot of different challenges, and the way it's portrayed, it's going to impact everyone no matter what. Let's all face that. Like it's like where we see things that like that doesn't relate to ourselves or to others, or so there are some that do. You know, like for me, like I've watched the show with the character Attorney Wu. I love that show, especially like for me, that how it relates for me on that one is because of a girl who's really smart and like was able to pass like everything in school, which that's what happened with me. And then to the point where applying stuff in like workplaces and stuff can be tricky. And I've had those moments too. But like what's happening now, unlike the past, we're also, because of more of like our own voices are coming out, we have a lot more in the entertainment industry, that there's a lot more collaboration that's happening, where there are autistic consultants being invited on to collaborate on and everything. We all know, like you may have heard with Dr. Carrie Magro, who's been consulting on a bunch of movies and shows. So I just want to say that like the entertainment industry is making that collaboration. It's really making a big difference of more accurate representation of our community.
I feel like all the representation is about a higher functioning autistic person, and it never, ever represents what I grew up around and what's in my household. So I almost feel like it kind of gives like this false narrative that even my highest functioning brother could do X, Y, and Z when he can't even take himself to the bathroom. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's been a lot of representation, which is really great. It's also kind of like pigeonholed and like, okay, so if you're a little quirky, like it almost makes everyone think that they're autistic, like the Jerry Seinfeld conversation. Like it's almost like people want to be.
In episodes 165 and 166, we brought you Maxwell Huffman and Jen Gabode from Aspiritech, a quality assurance, accessibility, and data services company that creates meaningful employment for adults on the autism spectrum. Maxwell is autistic himself and oversees operations across all of Aspiritech's program lines. And Jen, who has ADHD, is the program manager for the company's accessibility program. In the following clips, Jen talks about the importance of accessibility in digital spaces, and Maxwell explains how to increase neurodiversity in the workplace.
Accessibility goes beyond a checklist, beyond guidelines. So we want to take a look at the experience as a whole. And I think that from having a team that is neurodiverse, we have an interesting perspective because like Maxwell has said, I think I have ADHD myself, and I notice that I see things on a web page, I think differently than others do because I'm distracted by so many things that like I notice that this isn't flowing right. This doesn't have a good feel to it. This is distracting me from what I'm trying to accomplish on this page. So I think that our team, being neurodiverse, has a really interesting perspective with web accessibility, and we can talk a lot about experiences as a whole and go beyond those guidelines. If you can't access a web page, it means you might not be able to pay your bills. You might not be able to make a doctor's visit. You might not be able to access online learning or a Zoom call from your workplace. So the internet is such a space that can open up so many doors for people. And yet, by creating inaccessible experiences, you're still closing doors for people in a space that should be opening them.
Think about the environment. Think about the environment on all levels. Does the staff member need to work in the office? Can they work hybrid? Ask them, what makes this job comfortable and successful for them as an individual day to day? Look at what the requirements of the job are and try to match that with that individual's skill sets, but then try to match that environment that's needed to make that function properly. Because I do think too many companies are just forcing people into, like I mentioned earlier, this cookie cutter model of, well, this is what our documents say. But does that necessarily have to be that for this person, for this individual? Can you make a slight accommodation and maybe get fantastic work that, you're going to see excels everyone else you have on your team? I've heard these stories. And one of the main issues that I've actually seen is when they do make these accommodations at a neurotypical company for someone that's on the spectrum or blind or deaf or what have you, then it's difficult to then replace that person when they retire or something happens to them, because they're so good at their job with the few accommodations that they've given this individual that they excel everyone else on the team. And I'm telling you, it's not just that you found some disabled superstar, it's that you've made accommodations. That's the key that they've done there. So what I would say is talk to the individuals you work with, make those accommodations, invest in those accommodations. That's the key. That's the thing in bold here, is make the investment. Talk to whoever you need to talk to, the higher ups at the company, to explain that there will be a return on investment for making those accommodations. And then we'll start to see that change in the world. That's how I feel about it.
Catherine Peterson joined us in episodes 167 and 168. Catherine is a board-certified behavior analyst and the founder of 2 Steps Forward Consulting, a company offering early intervention coaching to help parents navigate the education system. In this clip, Catherine talks about how to better understand individualized education plans, or IEPs for short.
Standardized assessments are not who your child is. And the school district has to do this because they have to have standards for how they qualify or don't qualify children for special education, but trying to work with parents to not get hung up in those standard deviations and in the tests, because that's not who their child is. Their child is that kid in the other room playing with trains right now. And let me think through this with you where you understand why the school is talking about it, but you're not getting stuck in it. And then even just the process for how they determine a classroom setting and what is a free and appropriate public education, which is what every kid has the right to. So just education on what it looks like, and then tips to say to them, you are a part of your child's IEP team. You should share your thoughts on what you think is best for your child, and you should share your concerns, and you're not just a passive participant in the meeting. I think it's important that parents know that it's overwhelming and it's a big meeting with lots of people who parents usually meet that day. But the IEP team wants the family to be a part of it too. And so I think just that knowledge of you are an expert in your child, and you can go in there and you can say what your concerns are, and you don't have to feel like this is just happening around you.
Episode 169 was a global autism community roundtable about music, art, and creativity, hosted by community moderator Danielle Terrell. Here are autistic self-advocates Christina Casperson and Stephanie DeKramer, and art therapist Melissa Badicher discussing using art to connect with others, breaking out of the perfectionist box, and letting go of imposter syndrome.
I think that desire that you have as an artist to communicate something and to connect with people, it kind of pushes you to do things that you wouldn't normally perhaps do, and to get something out there. You do expose yourself to a possible rejection or criticism, critique when you do that. But when you create something, it's a way that you want to connect with people.
I think we do have to break out of this feeling of needing to perfectly imitate something else. I know when I was doing piano, it was just trying to copy exactly what was there. And I'm amazed when people do, jazz style, just improvising. And like I found when I did a little bit of guitar, because I was just playing chords on guitar. And just from playing the chords, you kind of do your own melody in your head. Whereas with piano, I felt like stuck in a box. And I'd be interested in, Andrew, in your cookbook, because when I've cooked in the past, I had to follow the recipe exactly. And if I didn't have nutmeg, I would be like, well, this is ruined. I can't do this recipe now. Let's order takeout. Whereas now, having the flexibility of maybe I've got cinnamon, being able to break and bend the rules doesn't come naturally to me. And I imagine to a lot of other people, especially here in this community. And I'd love to get to the stage where you're breaking a little bit more outside the box and not being able to just follow the rules as much, I guess, with art.
Sometimes it feels like we're not wanting to share with other people what we're creating because we aren't yet satisfied with it, or we feel like we still have so much improvement to be made. Whereas to somebody who hasn't pursued that hobby or hasn't dabbled in it, or somebody who maybe doesn't paint from a reference, what you're already creating is so beautiful and so much farther beyond what another person may have even thought to create. And vice versa. You might look at something that is completely different from your approach to that particular hobby or pursuit in a creative way. And you can have so much appreciation for it. But if it isn't exactly what the person creating it was going for, they might be less likely to share, because I know I ran into that so much with my own art making. And I always say that I'm a hobby singer, which means I sing in the shower by myself and don't let anybody hear me, because it's not up to par with what I think it should be. But somebody else overhearing me might have a different idea. And just like Stephanie is saying, if we don't share that information, nobody else is going to even know that that's something that we're interested in, or something that we're able or willing to pursue.
In episode 170, we hosted another Global Autism Community Roundtable discussion. That month's theme was overcoming prejudice and breaking stigma. Listen to autistic self-advocates Thomas Island, Corbin Havener, and Brian Middleton talking about their ideas of autistic gaslighting, the role of parents in advocacy, and how autism is often dehumanized.
I would say gaslighting means basically being told or given the idea that what you are thinking, feeling, and experiencing is not what is really happening. And from what I understand, there was a movie called Gaslight in which a husband was telling his wife that what she was seeing or experiencing or feeling was not the case at all. And she was driving herself nuts, thinking she was going insane, when really he was deceiving her. Applying that to the autism community, sometimes we are told what we are seeing, feeling, experiencing, thinking is invalid or not the case. And yet we are the ones that say nothing about us without us. And who better to learn about autism than from someone who lives with it every day? So it would make more sense, or the most sense even, for the community, society as a whole, to listen to us more, believe us when we say something, and take what we have to offer into the next steps.
I think that comes down to the term that in the self-advocate community we know as the autism mom, which is not an endearing term from our point of view, because when I think of that term, I think about the parent that makes it their entire personality and is essentially mourning the child they wish they had, that they think autism took away from them. But there is a difference. You can be a parent to an autistic child that is a great advocate, that will show up at the IEP meetings and make sure that none of their needs are being shortchanged, or making sure that they have the appropriate level of independence as they age. So, for example, they have the opportunity with special education supports to be able to receive and participate in the appropriate level of curriculum and participate with all of their peers. And that would be the difference between, say, an autism mom and the parent of an autistic child.
One of the things that autistics and really anybody who experiences disability that we consistently struggle with is the fact that we're dehumanized. We're a person with a disability, as if it's some sort of lump on our shoulder that needs to be removed. And I like to point out over and over again, because I think this helps people to understand, if you are good at drawing or music, you're not a person with artistry, you're an artist. If you're good at physical activity and sports, you're not a person with athleticism, you're an athlete. If you're somebody who has children and you take care of them, you're not a person with parentalism, you're a parent. Who are we? Autism is a part of who we are, but I am not just autistic. I am also a parent. I'm also a teacher. I am also an artist. I am also a poet. I am also a friend, a father, a husband, a child, an explorer. Like, who are we? And really, that's the problem that we're facing, is that the system that's currently in place is one that dehumanizes us consistently.
In episodes 171 and 172, we took you on a SkillCorps journey with our Team Kenya volunteers. In the next few clips, you'll hear our partner from Kaizora in Nairobi, Mo Gathogo, sharing her experience with Global Autism Project, trip leader Jessie Sheehan describing the collaboration between Kaizora and a local business that employs their graduates, and SkillCorps volunteers Colleen Dorsey and Danica Moyes sharing their takeaways about teamwork and cultural humility.
My experience with Global Autism Project Partnership has been very collaborative and educative. My takeaway from SkillCorps has been informative, educative, especially from the trainings on marketing, communication, and behavior management. My hopes for the autistic community in Kenya is creating more awareness and inclusion. Thank you.
The two teams were in communication. Kaizora was able to have some of the materials from Grounded. So the bottles, Grounded is a company that makes all natural. I don't want to miss, but they make some cleaning supplies that smell amazing and are, I think, good for the planet. They were able to send the bottles and the labels that would be a potential a role for someone is to do that labeling process. And so at Kaizora, they were able to start teaching the steps that are required to be able to take a label and properly put it on the different types of packaging, and to teach that to several of their students who are older and are in that vocational space and are looking for to be ready to transition into a workplace. And so doing before even, going to Grounded or working with the staff directly, the Kaizora team was able to start that with their students. It was really cool.
We work so hard back home and in our jobs, and we're so passionate about what we do. And then to be together with people that are just as passionate as we are and just as like-minded, it was just the most genuine connection I've ever had with a group of people. And genuinely every single person, it was just so beautiful. And I also was just so inspired by the team and how, when it came to preparing trainings for the staff at Kaizora, it was so natural and so simple. I've been on these trips before where everyone, stresses and worries about making the perfect slideshow or having all the right things, where this team just knew what the assignment was. They understood the assignment and they just delivered, right? And they didn't stand up there and lecture. They sat with the team, they interacted with the team, and they made it feel like such a true collaboration, and that everyone was here to learn from each other and to work with each other. And it was just such a beautiful thing to witness. And it was for all teams, all topics, all training days. It was just so natural and easy and enjoyable. And I just am so impressed by this team of professionals. And I loved also that everyone brought in their different backgrounds too. It wasn't just a very BCBA driven or special ed teacher driven. It was everyone got to bring in their expertise as well as the Kaizora staff and all of their expertise too.
When I hear the word cultural humility, to me, it's almost like a process of like self-awareness and reflection and also lifelong learning, right? I will never completely understand this culture because I wasn't born into it. However, if I'm just open to it, that's where the beauty happens. And I think we all got to experience it because we literally all said, I know we have all this knowledge and expertise and years of experience, but we want to learn from you guys too, because I'm going to learn how to be a better practitioner from this experience. And I can even go even deeper for myself. Even a part of me, like my family's from a third world country. So I was under the impression of, oh yeah, I already know what this is going to be like. And even I was humbled by some of the things that I saw, some of the neighborhoods that we drove through, and a lot of the advocacy work that we did. I was moved and pushed. And it really just goes to show like it's a full process. Like you have to be open. You have to do a lot of self-work, self-awareness, ask yourself those tough questions, respect them. And in doing all of that, that's how you're able to get into that do with, not for, right? Because it really wants you to make sure that it's sustainable. And by doing it with them and teaching them and helping them come up with the solutions, you might give them a little nudge, a little soft prompt. But for the most part, you're giving them the autonomy to realize like, we can do this. We do have what it takes. But again, I really do believe it started with us. Like we had to go in with a certain mindset and an approach, and we got to see that difference. And I think a good part is that Global Autism Project had us do trainings and build rapport prior to us going to Kaizora. So I think that also played a huge role in how we worked with each other as professionals so that we could be our best self professionally for them.
Episode 173 was a special episode celebrating 4 years of this podcast and 3 years of our global autism community, a safe and judgment-free online space where all kinds of people connected to autism regularly discuss important topics like autistic identity, dating on the spectrum, coping strategies, and many, many more. Here are autistic self-advocates Sarah Bradford and Adrienne Sanchez, and community members Danielle Terrell and TJ Laram, explaining why they enjoy being part of the community.
I think that this community was kind of my landing page, if you will, in my story as well, because I was here to make connections and as a mom, but then also shared in one of the podcast episodes that I thought that I might be autistic and I was going to go get tested. And then, here I got to show back up 6 months later, or however long it took, and say, I'm here. I knew this was where I belonged. And not only that, and I hope that you guys can share my sentiment, especially Rachel and Danielle, but the availability and connections that I've been able to make that have helped me also on my platform raise and elevate autistic voices in so many ways and bring people together and create these communities and just the family. It feels like family when you come back to these spaces and when you come to the events and things. So I'm so grateful for that and so grateful that I found this place I can call home.
In my short time here, I've learned that it's a very open community and it's the best place to go to if anyone's ever feeling alone with autism. In other words, just having it hard to find the right people who don't share the same common interests or have the same sensory issues. And in the cities where there's not a lot going on, or other communities that don't express autism, especially if it's not being seen as a dynamic, it's nice to be on here and communicate with the others that support the good cause and trying to raise it up as being part of a global phenomenon, trying to make it part of diversity. And for anyone who is looking for the right place where they feel like they don't share the same common interests as everyone else and feel like they need to express it a little more, then this Global Autism Project is definitely the right place to be.
It's just an amazing place to be. I always look forward to our roundtable discussions, and from working where I'm a little more removed full time and spend more time behind a screen, it's really great to have this connection and to communicate with everyone all over the world. I think the international aspect of it is something that's truly unique, and we get to share so much with each other, laugh together, learn together, cry together. It really is a family.
For the short amount of time I've been a part of the community, it's helped keep me grounded as a service provider. It's nice to make sure that I'm, I guess, trying to be the best provider I can for all the people that I work with. And that has, being part of the Global Autism Project community has been certainly helpful in doing so.
In episodes 174 and 175, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jonathan Gardner, an autistic self-advocate, cancer survivor, supported decision maker, and motivational speaker. In the following clips, Jonathan describes the moment he learned about his cancer and why he chose supported decision making over guardianship.
After a small amount of plotting, my mother told me I had cancer. To be honest, I thought it was some sick joke. I thought it was some joke that didn't make sense, but after a couple of minutes of processing, I realized I had cancer. And then the first thought I had was, honestly, how are we going to tell everyone I know about this? So I gathered my mom, my dad, and brother, and I told them I have cancer. And honestly, we've all never cried so much that day. I was so sad for them, honestly. I was not even thinking about myself at the time. Here's the empathy kicking in. Too much of it. Don't think about yourself at the moment. I'm just thinking, God, how am I going to help everyone at this moment? I know that sounds like, oh, this is such an egotistical thing. What is such a great person? No, this is literally what I thought of at the time. And I am not even joking. I'm trying to console my brother and everything like that. Well, trying to console myself to an extent. I'm trying to console my father as I'm just saying I'm going to be all right and all that stuff. I'm going to be fine. But honestly, I was just preparing everyone for the worst case scenario and the best case scenario at the same time, which thankfully the best case scenario happened. Supported decision making is an alternative to guardianship where it puts the person, me, in control of my life. I'm the decision maker in my life. I have used supported decision making since I was 16 years old, since my mom and dad went to a workshop to find out a little bit more about it, since my mom and I didn't feel guardianship was right for me because, that's not how we really roll. I have a lot of, agency of my own life, honestly, and me and my mom respect that of myself. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just to clarify, can you explain what guardianship is, just so it's all clear for people?
Oh, absolutely. So guardianship basically is a court-ordered person that kind of runs your life, honestly. But here's the thing about guardianship. You don't get to choose that person. That's never been how me and my mom's rolled, or my father or my brother. We've always worked similar to a support network, funny enough. So my mom met with the superintendent who was basically kind of trying to push guardianship on us because I take medication for my autism. And that didn't feel right for us. So my mom went to a couple of workshops and then she brought back supported decision-making to me. And here's my words at the time that I strictly said about supported decision-making after learning about it. So it's basically what we're doing right now. And my mom said, yes.
Episode 176 featured a few attendees of the International Mental Health Conference held in Alexandria, Egypt last April. Here's President of the Egyptian Autistic Society, Dalia Salomon, explaining how autism awareness has changed in Egypt over the last couple of decades, self-advocate Rami Al-Hadinziden Sayed sharing his hopes for the autistic community, and mother and BCBA Sylvie Welga sharing valuable tips for parents.
I think a lot has changed. The awareness has definitely increased. We've been doing annual campaigns with Autism Speaks, in Egypt here on a national level. We've joined the Light It Up Blue campaign, where we light up the pyramids blue and some of our monuments in blue to gain attention. And so people start speaking about autism and what it is. So the awareness has made a huge difference. Also, we've managed to introduce in several schools and universities, especially universities, which did not exist before, even in our main medical school, sections on autism. Now there are complete programs and even PhD programs in Egypt on autism, which did not exist before. So in 1999, maybe 70 to 80% of the cases I was getting were misdiagnosed. Now I believe that, so usually parents come to me and they have an idea that their child could be autistic. So this is a huge change from before, because even, of course, this is a lot of it is thanks to the awareness, but and the internet. But at least parents know what to search for now. And pediatricians and neurologists are more aware that this does exist. And so most of the cases are already coming in diagnosed.
We want to create more autistic centers here around Egypt, help a lot of people to improve, help support parents to support children who have autistic to get better and better.
Yeah.
Because people need help with autistic. Even if you finish high school, they need to go to a program or center. Like it's part of their home.
What kinds of services did you receive growing up?
I received a lot of help from special education, basic skills, everything, resource rooms, educational assistance, so on. And my supportive. She's a behavioral consultant dealing with autism. Her name is Rima Al-Salah.
Okay, amazing. Anything else you want to share?
I would say I want to continue to improve and improve more to reach my goals. I know everyone is with me. Everyone's being supportive with me at all times.
So my biggest advice to the parent would be that when you have that diagnosis, that denial period should not be too long, because early intervention is crucial. It's crucial for your child to learn the skills that they need to learn in order to thrive. And you want them to thrive at this point. You want them to be able to acquire skills that will enable them to live a life. It may not be the life that you dreamed for them, but it will be a life that is satisfying, based on their diagnosis and based on what they will be going through. So I will advise them to do the research, learn from other parents. Luckily today, everybody's talking about autism now. It's less of our awareness, it's more acceptance. And what is acceptance to me? Acceptance is understanding that things are different than what you expected and be okay with that. But how do you continue to pursue your value regarding that child or regarding your family when the things are different from what you expected? So first, recognize that you will have to make some changes in the way that you saw that child. And as I always like to quote Dr. Wendayu said, if you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at will change.
And that concludes part 1 of our 2024 Highlights episode. I hope this trip down memory lane left you feeling inspired to create change in your own community. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and come back next week to finish this year with part 2 of our highlights. Thanks for listening. Take care.